friends, it's me, Em again, and welcome back to my channel where we talk about all things sinister. If you're interested in true crime, or if you like all things horror related, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button. That way you can join me for some morbid conversation. And today we are going to stray away from true crime and talk about another morbid passion of mine, and that's the world of horror. And we are going to be getting into one of my all-time favorite horror guilty pleasures, and that is the Saw series, which I understand that they get progressively worse and worse, and they get cheesier and cheesier as they go. But for me, Saw has been such a part of my Halloween tradition for, I don't know, since the first one came out that I can't even remember not celebrating Halloween without Saw. I saw every one of them in theaters as soon as they would roll out on like opening day, and it's my thing. Like, the first one was great. The other ones kind of fell a little short. Nothing lived up to the original one, but I still love them. I still have a soft spot for them. I watch them at least once a year in October. I will do a rewatch every year. When they put out new movies, I watch them immediately. When Spiral came out, I was so excited to see it coming back, and it's one of my favorites. It's one of my guilty pleasures. So the concept of Saw, I always thought was a neat one. And John Kramer is hands down one of my favorite villains. But this video is going to be a bit of a critique on the series, because in this video, we're going to be talking about the Saw traps that just genuinely piss me off. And we are not going to include any of Amanda's traps that she set up to fail, because they all piss me off. But we are going to be talking about Saw traps that stray from the spirit of the games, in my opinion, and the ones that make me the most upset because of that. So we don't get to see a lot of in-depth traps play out in the first movie. We don't get to see the background or the storyline of a lot of the traps. We just catch small little blips here and there because the main story is centered in the bathroom with Lawrence and Adam. But one of the traps that does piss me off is the flammable jelly trap. And the reason why, okay, my opinion could change on this if they go into this trap more in the future, but I mean, obviously they're not going to, because they've ignored it for like a decade. But here's my problem with the trap. With the flammable jelly trap, there is poison in his veins, so obviously he's on a time constraint. He's given matches and like a little bitty tea light, so if the poison wasn't going to put him on a time constraint, his ability to have light is going to be on a time constraint, because when he runs out of matches, eventually that candle's going to burn up. He doesn't have an indefinite amount of time. And numbers are written everywhere. And essentially, like, it's not just going to be his will to live to be able to get out of this situation. A lot of it is going to be determined based off of luck, starting in the right place of looking at these numbers and trying these different numbers. There's not really going to be a skill involved there. You can only do what you can do, and I don't feel like he would have enough time, either with the poison or with his light source, to be able to try every number combination that's written on the walls. Now, this could have been improved if he would have done a Jigsaw like clue, kind of like what he did in the gas house, where you'll find the order somewhere over the rainbow as far as the numbers on the back of their necks and stuff like that. He didn't come out directly telling them what the combination was, but he gave them clues as to how to figure out that combination. What I would have liked to have seen in this scene to make it, in my mind, an appropriate Saw trap, not necessarily to directly come out and tell him the combination, but maybe give him a clue about the first number and a clue about the last number, so that way if he could kind of problem solve what those two numbers are, he would be able to take the candle to the wall looking for those two numbers and finding the sequence with those two numbers and therefore the number in between, and be able to put that combination into the safe and save himself that way. Not doing something like that leaves this basically up to chance, and that just, it really pisses me off. I feel like it strays away from the spirit of the games. The only other trap in the first movie that just genuinely makes me so mad, and I will get heated about it to anybody who wants to talk about it, Adam's death. Because in my opinion, Adam showed extraordinary will to live. He was able to last the entire game. You know, one of the things is don't get killed by Gordon. Gordon wants to kill you. Don't be killed by Gordon. He lasts the whole game. He problem solves while he's in there. He and Gordon work together and they problem solve, showing that he's, putting forth the effort. And like he bashes Zepp's head in with a freaking tank cover off the back of a toilet. He shows serious will to live. He shows serious desire to live. And you're telling me he lost his game because his key went down the drain at the beginning of the movie at no fault of his own. We actually end up finding later on that it's Amanda's fault. And Kramer gets up and sees that Adam is still alive and all this, and still's like, whatever, I guess you're done. To me, that just feels like a ripoff. I would have liked to have seen what Adam would have been like as a survivor. Later on we see multiple survivors, and obviously Dr. Gordon makes revisiting in the series. I think that Adam would have been a very interesting survivor, and I feel like that was such a cheap way out on Adam. I really enjoyed Adam as a character, and it was such a cheap way out with his character, and it really it pisses me off. So now we can move on to the second movie, but honestly we can skip right over it. Not because I loved every trap in this movie, but because none of them genuinely pissed me off. I think that there are aspects to every trap where they could be winnable in this movie. I don't see any that's so cut and dry that it strays away from the spirit of the game where it pisses me off. So we can just skip on over number 2. Now, for a different reason, we can skip number 3 because literally opposite problem here. Almost every trap in number 3 pisses me off because they were either A, made by Amanda and therefore made to be unwinnable, like the angel trap, like the classroom trap, or they are just unwinnable for the victims. They rely solely on Jeff to win their game for them, and it doesn't matter what their will to survive is. The judge cannot get out of the pig vat without the help of Jeff. The rack is going to continue to turn no matter what your will to live is without the help of Jeff. So to me, I freaking hate that. Like, what happened to the will to live? What happened to you must sacrifice something yourself? Right now we're counting on one person to do all the sacrificing for essentially strangers, and strangers he has a vendetta against. So he doesn't even have motivation to be helping them. You know what I mean? Like, he has a reason to want them to suffer. So I just find that to be very unfair. So we're not going to talk about Saw number 3 either. So in Saw 4, we kind of go back to the roots of people sacrificing something to survive and seeing how the human spirit is able to survive. So I like that. I appreciate that. The only trap that I kind of have an issue with is the scalping machine. And the reason why I say kind of is, yes, she relies on Riggs to free her from the machine, but also Riggs is told to leave her alone and walk away. And because he interfered, the machine started going because of his interference. So we don't know what would have happened had he just walked away. Maybe she didn't have to go through a trap at all. Maybe if he had walked away, she would have just been released. We really don't know, so I can't have a full problem with it. So it's just kind of, it's worth mentioning, but my opinion's not super strong on that one. Again, when it comes to the next movie, I have no issues with the Fatal Five. Like, every trap is winnable if the game is played correctly. Granted, they're not all won because the team did not work together from the very beginning, but had they played the game correctly, all the traps are winnable in some sort of way, so I have no problem with that. So now we go to Saw 6, which I swear you're going to think I hate these movies, and I really don't. I love the Saw movies. But Saw 6 is another one where a lot of the movie pisses me off because now we are going back to relying on someone else to save you. And you have no choice in it. You don't get the opportunity to show your will to live. You have things like the shotgun carousel where I guess the best you could do is try to be convincing on why you should be the one to live. But then also you have things like the wire noose where sorry, he's just going to pick one of you and the one that he picks is saved and the one he doesn't pick is dead and you don't have any say in that. You don't have any chance of survival. If he picks you, you're done. And I don't think that's fair. Also, the ones where you do have a chance at survival, where you do have an opportunity to, live or die, make your choice. I think of like the oxygen mask right from the very beginning. And I know that this is done to highlight the point in the whole storyline of the insurance world being kind of an unjust thing. I know that that is the motivation, but dude is at a disadvantage right out the gate. He's older, he's a smoker, he's already given a hard mode level. And so he really didn't have a fair advantage at the beginning either. So as far as the traps go, I don't like that. I feel like it strays so far from the original concept of the Saw movies. And then you get to the end of the movie where he finally makes it through the entire maze. And at the end, he has shown his will to live. He has shown his will to fight. And in my opinion, he's learned his lesson as the insurance guy that life is more than just the stats on the paper. I mean, he shows that it's not always who you would think has the most value in their life. He sees the importance. The lesson is learned. The concept is understood. Despite all that, despite the fact that he tried to save people, despite the fact that he learned his lesson, despite the fact that he made it to the end, he makes it to the end with two people who are pissed off at him and they get to choose whether he lives or dies. And they're pissed off at him. He essentially killed their dad. So it doesn't matter what his will to live was like. It doesn't matter that he learned his lesson. He dies. But in my opinion, the worst lineup of traps that deviate from the original purpose and the original spirit of Jigsaw is Saw 7, Saw 3D, Saw the Final Cut, whatever you want to call it. That one, I hate every single trap in this movie. I hate every single trap because, again, there is no control from the victims to survive. Everybody else depended on Bobby to save them, depended on Bobby to pull the key out of her throat, depended on Bobby to, get him across all the boards, depended on Bobby to stop the spikes from going in her eyes. I mean, none of these people could have won without Bobby. And obviously, none of them did win because Bobby sucks at the game. But the reason why this one absolutely makes the top of my least favorite Saw movies as far as ranking of the traps is because of the bull, the brazen bull, the bull at the end of the movie. And this is why that one pisses me off more than any other traps in the whole series. Every single person in a trap that has pissed me off, like in a trap that was unwinnable by them, where they depended on somebody else, could be perceived as guilty of something. They were the judge that gave the guy who hit his kid a light sentence. They were the people who worked in the insurance company that was known for scamming people. Like, it might not be a huge infraction. It might be like a minor thing, like, oh, she's the secretary at the insurance company, but she worked there, so therefore she supported it. But Bobby's wife, from my understanding, and feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, I've watched these movies a lot. From my understanding, she had no idea that Bobby was scamming people with a fake story. From my understanding, she believed him just as much as people who bought his book believed him. You know, his friend, the guy who ended up getting a noose, yeah, he knew Bobby was lying. And so, in that sense, he was guilty of supporting Bobby. His lawyer, who knew the truth, his publicist, who knew the truth, like all these people who knew the truth could be seen as guilty. But his wife, from my understanding, didn't know the truth. And so she was essentially just chained up and mentally tortured watching her husband go through these trials. And she ended up dying a horrific death as, in my opinion, an innocent person. For what? Like, that's just straight up murder. Not that the other ones are straight up murder, but that is just straight up murder because, I mean, it's unjustified straight up murder. She didn't do anything. You could at least argue that the other people did something or had a hand in something where Jigsaw would judge them, but she did nothing except for, I guess, fell in love with the wrong guy. That's what she did. Men. But it pisses me off. I hate the bull so much, and I hate the circumstances surrounding the bull. I think it's a cool concept. It goes back to like medieval torture devices, and I think that's kind of cool to have that little bit of history in there. But the utilization of it, I hated it. I hated it. Worst one, in my opinion. And with that being said, that pretty much ends my list. Jigsaw, the movie Jigsaw, I think a lot of the traps were winnable, and the ones that relied on somebody else to win. I mean, the only one that I can think of from that movie is the grain silo where he had to sacrifice his leg by pulling the lever to let them out. Yeah, they depended on him to let them out. And maybe that one's kind of iffy. But I mean, I didn't really. Jigsaw's probably one of my least favorite out of all of the stories. And so none of them really made an impact on me enough to piss me off. And specifically, I'm not including Spiral in this list because this list is a very specific list of saw traps that piss me off because they stray away from the spirit, the original spirit of Jigsaw and the original mentality of Jigsaw of making somebody show or prove how much their life is worth by doing a personal sacrifice. And Spiral, I don't feel it's fair to judge Spiral on those standards because if you've seen Spiral, and I hope you have, if you're watching this movie and you haven't realized by now that it's chock full of spoilers, warning, there's spoilers for Spiral. But in Spiral, they took John's ideology of, taking people who take life for granted and who don't appreciate life and putting them through this test to, see what life is worth and see if they have the strength to survive. They took that philosophy and rather than applying it to a general sense of just anyone who could benefit from that kind of rehabilitation, they focused it on police corruption, which, I mean, that's worth looking into. But since the philosophy has notably changed from the original concept to a new concept targeting police corruption, I feel like since the philosophy changed, it's not fair to judge Spiral off of the original philosophy. Does that make sense? So I think Spiral's a great movie. I really enjoyed it. I have it on DVD. I'll probably watch it again soon instead of waiting until October because I really do enjoy the movie. But I feel like it's obviously it's separate from the Saw series. I feel like we had a final chapter, like a real final chapter with the Saw series, and I'm thinking maybe we might have a new chapter that opens up with Spiral, and I'm kind of excited to see where they take that, if they take it anywhere. I hope they do because I love Saw. So that's basically it. That's the short and quick chat for the day. Like I said, I'm wanting to get a little bit more into horror related stuff because if you're into true crime or if you like all things horror related, that is my interest. That is what I really enjoy spending my free time on, is true crime and horror stuff. And so if that's what you're into, if that's the kind of stuff that you like, again, hit the like and subscribe button and turn on the post notification bells because I am trying to get videos out at least once a week. I'm hoping to shoot for twice a week in this new year. Kind of got tied up with sickness, but I'm really hoping to be on track to doing 2 videos a week going forward. And so make sure you have your post notification bell turned on. That way you can be here and be notified the next time I post, and you can join me for another morbid conversation. Until then, as always, stay safe, take care, and I will see you guys later. Bye.